Welcome to the ABOP podcast. ABOP is the Alliance of Black Orchestral Percussionists, a nonprofit organization that focuses on mentoring future generations of Black percussionists. My name is Raynor Carroll. I am an ABOP founder. Thank you for joining our podcast. This episode, Strategies for Personal and Professional Development, will focus on some of the key qualities in transitioning to a professional life. Our panel for this discussion includes Ricky Burkhead, Professor of Music and Director of Percussion Studies, University of Mississippi. Terry McKinney, Principal Percussion, Baton Rouge Symphony. Joseph Mitchell, Adjunct Instructor, El Camino College and Los Angeles Harbor College. And Don Parker, Chair and Professor of Music, Georgia College and State University. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast and thank you for being here.
It's great to be here.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you.
Pleasure's mine.
So our topic is Strategies for Personal and Professional Development, with an emphasis on transitioning from student to professional. In my experience with students, frequently they struggle with certain aspects of maturity and growth as it relates to being a professional, no matter what occupation they have chosen. And of course, with ABOP's mentorship program, this is something that is critical, identifying issues and having conversations with our protégés. I think of this in the same way that I approach teaching private lessons. My goal is for the student not to need me. Through all of the lesson time we have together, I want the student to feel confident in whatever musical challenges they may have in the future based on our time together. So the same is true for our protégés regarding lessons in life. Have healthy conversations so that when issues do arise, they have the basis to make a decision. A starting point for our conversation and a possible starting point for someone preparing or making the transition to professional life is self-assessment. Being able to take a moment to reflect upon where you are in life, where you have come from, and where you are going. This reflection is both musical and personal, with all of the qualities that make up one's personality. All right, so I open up the discussion to the panel, the importance of self-assessment.
Yeah, Raynor, this one is something that's always, I think I end up doing this at the end of each calendar year as well as each academic year, mainly because, having been in the academic world since forever, those are points of departure, points of transition for me, especially if you are a person considering being in the academic environment. And so oftentimes I use that as a means to kind of be able to define where I want to be at certain points. In terms of musically, I kind of evaluate what things went well, what things didn't go so well. I try to decide as if, do I want to repeat those things or how do I want to adjust some things? I know that I am, from a playing standpoint, I know that what balance do I want to have in terms of things that I set up to play and things that I want to let someone else take the lead in, because all those things take different amounts of times. If I'm setting up a clinic, that's one thing. If I'm setting a performance, that's another thing. And so each one of them, a certain balance that I have to have with that. And I kind of evaluate what that skill is that I'm gonna need or time. In terms of the personal thing, that is always difficult for a musician. Because you're trying to balance the idea of, okay, I've got to set up this gig, but I also got to make sure I have X amount of funds to be able to do this. And I also need X amount of time to be able to do that. And I think the biggest influence on both those things when I'm trying to reflect is play to my strengths, of course, which is every percussionist is an organizer, or am I working on some other things that I think were going to make me go a little further. Again, I'm in a unique position because I'm a chair, but I still wear that percussion hat. And so that's a challenge. So that's kind of the self-assessment. Those times of years when I do that.
Well, this is my 40th year teaching, and I've learned a lot over those 40 years. A lot of that I've learned has to do with the students that I teach. When I first started out, I used like the Eastern Illinois curriculum, North Texas, maybe Florida State as a guide to like where I wanted the students to start and to end up. Well, maybe I had 1 out of 12 that could maybe keep up with the curriculum even after I simplified it and made it not as tough. So I've learned a lot over the years that I have different students, and even though I have a curriculum right now, we do a certain amount of things each semester based on their level. I still learn to make adjustments in that. My year starts with I had to plan for 2 concerts at least, percussion ensemble concert and the steel band, and those are on the same concert. But I had to prepare both of those groups for concert, so I had to look at the numbers, like which percussionist is going to say, "Well, I'm not going to do percussion ensemble this semester or steel band." I can't make them do it. I can suggest that this is important that you do it and try to encourage them to do so. Sometimes that's not always the case, so I had to learn to deal with that. Once we get that all together, we have those concerts. I feel gratified in the fact that we seem to always make it to the point where it's a good concert. In terms of the students' development, by the end of the semester, when we get to that last jury, with a panel of other instrumental faculty members, try to make sure that we've achieved our goals, snare drum wise, mallet wise, timpani wise, sometimes hand drum wise. So I've learned a lot to make adjustment based on the students that I have and know that everyone, it's not a cookie cutter curriculum. Not everyone's going to learn at the same pace. Some of the guys don't make it to the mark that I want them to make it to, but as long as they make progress, I feel pretty good about it. So I've learned a lot in that process.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in there in regards to self-assessment. One of the schools that I worked at, El Camino College, required, I think it was every other year, that I do a written assessment of myself and submit it for my faculty portfolio. So that was a good practice because it forced me to really take a look at what kind of improvement I'm making and what areas are my strengths and what areas are my weaknesses. So this was required of me. So I found it, once I got over the intimidation factor of admitting my shortcomings, it was great because it did force me to take an objective look at preparation for students in terms of the material that I wanted them to pursue for the goals of basically meeting the jury requirement at the end of the semester, or for the percussion classes I taught in order to satisfy the student learning outcome goals. So it's very important, and it's very important that I put it in writing. I made an assessment of the various points, and then went about trying to fulfill them. Some things, it wasn't like a zero-sum thing where if I didn't get to everything that that I had failed, but that I at least had a reckoning of, we have to be true to ourselves first, and then move forward from there to be serious about what we do as teachers and as artists. So I think the writing down process and the process of the administration requiring this of me was very important.
I've been teaching for many years, but primarily I teach privately now. I have my own private studio, and I do a lot of playing. So my assessment is sort of quite skittish in that I don't have a set structure, as some people do. So as far as my personal self-assessment, when I teach privately, that can happen anywhere from the end of the school year to transition from one semester to the next. And I just basically, I reevaluate. I evaluate what happened with between myself and the students, what they accomplished, and what I would like for them to accomplish. I talk to them about what their needs are and what they would like to achieve. And I've noticed that it has changed over the years, depending on the students that I have and what they would like to do. And then I can then take that and move forward in a different way based off of what they bring to the table. So for example, I've had students before that really didn't want to do much. They just want to play and get their rating at the contest or whatever. They're satisfied with that, right? They just want their one. And so because I have so many students and I understand the school system, it's not as deep and profound as we all would like, right? Most of the kids just want the rating. It's not about really doing any kind of research or understanding music in depth. But I've noticed some students, I can actually get to that next level. So I've been talking to some, we've been talking about music theory, music history, doing some research. And so because I teach from 5th to 12th grade, I'm constantly trying to tap into each of their abilities and their desires. So sometimes it's just surface, let's do some scales, that's all you can do. Hold the stick, hold the mallet. Other students is who is this composer? How do they compose? What does the music mean? And so I'm not able to do that at year's end. Usually that happens mid-semester, in between semesters, based off of what we've accomplished and where they're going. As far as my own performance assessment, that's hard as well because I'm sure we all are very hypercritical of ourselves. And, I think I suffer from imposter syndrome sometimes. But what I've actually found that's really been helping me just even recently to really understand my musical passion and abilities is I took piano in college, but after that, everything has been self-taught. So I've got these like jazz books. I've just been reading charts. I have the Chopin nocturnes and everything. I've just been reading, and so I've just been teaching myself the Debussy, the Engulfed Cathedral, and Chopin's Nocturne Number One, and just playing. And my passion has just blown up because I'm now seeing music and what I do from a different angle. So it allows me to assess not just my playing, but how I think about music, how I approach music in a different way. So I think as far as self-assessment, I'm battling two fronts in that I have a self-assessment as a teacher, how I teach, how to interact with students, but also a self-assessment as a player. How do I execute what I do musically? How do I keep the passion going to then take it to the orchestral stage or to the next gig so that I can keep going? And then take that and take it back to the students and get them going. So it's a little convoluted sometimes, but it does keep me in my head a lot, which sometimes I don't need to be in my head.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very cool. So, as professionals, we've come to do this. My point is now shifting it to students. At what point should they, of course, I think some of them don't ever quite get there, to realize that this self-assessment is a thing of being a professional? You got to self-assess yourself first to realize where you're at, whether it's musically or personally. I mean, we can include our personal lives, our family lives too. It's all part of life. And that's a part of what we're doing with ABOP, with the mentorship program, is we're not focusing just on the music, but how they are making the transition from school to life, whether they're musicians or not. So what would you guys say to what do you say to your students with regard to this self-assessment and taking the time to reflect upon not only your playing, but how you're maturing and growing?
Yeah, this is the challenge.
And fighting their egos of
Yeah,
I'm
there,
fine, I'm good,
this is a challenge because you know you could as a professional that has supposed to be setting an example for the students, in my case, students and faculty. You say if there's a way that you've always done something that you've seen the improvement, let's not try to reinvent the wheel on that. Let's use that same mechanism to grow. Let's use that same method of being able to develop and push yourself through. I'm a super note taker. I have notes everywhere. If you went to my desk, they're all over the place, notes. But then I've gotten to the point where I say, all right, here's what we need to do and structure it. Okay. What things do you need to work on regularly? What things you need to are in that medium range? What things in the other range? Then I'm telling them or showing them and say, hey, look, you got a recital to prepare for, or a faculty member, you got to get this portfolio together. Or that other person that needs just a little guidance, hey, now it's time for you to get organized. I've had to wear the hat of helping a faculty member, helping a student, and then helping myself, and then helping a whole department and trying to say, here's a structure you can use. Oh, maybe you have some sort of mechanism that allows you to be able to learn. If that's your method, put it in the same context as if you're doing, even if it's just related to music, you can relate that to how you're going to get through things in life. It doesn't change because it's still some structure that has to be there in order for those things to move forward. But once you get
Right,
out in the real world, now you have to apply that same thing.
right.
It doesn't change. It's just who is going to push you. The push has to come from within a little bit to say, how do I do that again? That's exactly what happened with Fred Dunlap, who went back to finish his master's with Ricky at Ole Miss. He was one of my students at Fayetteville State, and he had procrastinated for I don't know how long. Ricky, You know the deal.
Yeah.
And when he got back there to finish his last stuff, he was calling me. What about this literature? I said, Fred, you know the literature. You played that. Or better yet, you know that I gave that to you X amount of years ago. How did we do it then? And he had to kind of think and start, oh yeah, man, yeah. I remember that. And Ricky, I never told you that. He called me, but because
Yeah.
he's a master. He was going, he finishes his master's. He's supposed to be able to kind of organize himself. But again, if you were a little removed, that made it a little bit more difficult. But I think he came through it and got through it.
He did. It was 10 years.
10 years.
10 years before he came back. And he gave the best recital that's been given by a percussion performance major at Ole Miss. It was really good. He had the ability, like you said, just procrastinating to do those things.
Right. And he had to organize himself. And and he started referring back to the things that he needed before that he had done, but keeping that in mind. So
Yeah.
again, that's the situation I run into in terms of, how you continuous improvement. But you always got to look back to see a little bit.
Oh, yeah. And Fred's an excellent teacher. It was really good to have him here as a grad assistant. All the things he could help me do, And then also he was much more mature at that time, so we became good colleagues and friends there. Each semester at Ole Miss, I have a curriculum based on level. It's by semester, like I said. Most of my students are going to be band directors, and you have one or two who want to be performance majors. So the curriculum is set up to make sure that they get individual instructions that are going to make them improve. Because a lot of the things they do is either going to be in a marching band where they're playing on a line, they're trying to match up one another, or in a concert or symphonic band when they play as a section in there. So we focus on the individual growth. So each week I document what we do in the lessons. So I set the assignment for the first week. Okay, we try to accomplish that, and then I'll make the assignment for the next week. But anything that we didn't accomplish, I'll add that to the assignment for the next week to see if they can try to make time to catch up on it. One good thing about this day and age is that anything they can't accomplish in the physical lesson, I have them make a video recording of, which means that they can go in and play that as many times as they want to get it right, but that makes them better because they're working on it. And so we do 12 weeks in a semester, although there's 14 in a school year, and then you have the final exams. So we try to accomplish all the things that we set out to do for those 12 weeks. Anything they don't accomplish in those weeks, they do enough in those 12 weeks. They do enough to pass the course, but that's carried over to the next semester. And sometime I'll make some changes, like if they're doing a lot of things in percussion ensemble, which we're doing a lot of heavy percussion ensemble stuff in steel band, I'll just let that substitute for some of the lesson stuff because they're still growing. So no need to just keep stacking stuff because they're growing and musically they're developing. And so that would be a good substitute for that. So that's how we go about it. And I have that record of each week and each semester, which I keep, forever. And they know where they stand at all times. They get a copy of that every week, so they know what they're doing.
Great.
Yeah.
So, how do we teach reliability, responsibility? These very important things that we know. You can only get but so far in school with not doing what your assignments are. And it's just not going to happen in the professional world because there are those that do. And the contractor is going to call those that do, as opposed to the ones that don't return the call or don't bring the instruments, et cetera, et cetera. How do we get across to students that when I ask you, or when I send you an email, you need to respond sooner rather than later? When I ask you to do something, you need to do it sooner rather than later. How do we get that point across?
I think it's important that I think it's hard to teach those qualities, but it's very easy for us to demonstrate those qualities. I think the students need to see us with those qualities and characteristics. So if they're around us, they need to see that we are reliable, we are on time, we are professional, we do communicate well. I think they respond more to actually seeing it than being sort of scolded or nagged, you need to do this, you need to do this. But they see us in that manner. I think that carries a lot more.
Yeah, the picture's worth 1,000 words on this one, but it's these little things that relate that go beyond what I call the playing, go beyond just talking about it. Is that all right? I've given you that assignment to do. Now, you understand that I'm not going to lead you through everything, but here are the things you need to consider along the way. Getting ready for percussion ensemble, moving the equipment to where it needs to be, taking responsibility to make sure everything's there. If you're the grad assistant, you're the person that needs to, you have to be able to take care of business. All those things, hopefully they would understand that those are the same things you have to use when you get out in the real world. But now you are the person. Whereas, okay, Mr. Burkhead is not going to pick up after me because I left something. No, now is that time that you have to do that. That lesson is a hard lesson because I've had to deal with that even now, where a student needs to understand that if they take the responsibility to have a performance, then it's on them to do everything that relates to getting to the performance. If they form a group, they have to understand that they're responsible for that group. It's not just their one thing, they're responsible for everything. And so getting out in that real world of where am I going to get the equipment from? Well, which is the number one thing we deal with. Where do I get the equipment? How do I transport the equipment? They need to think about that. And, I've had so many students, even here, with just small combos that they think, oh, well, I don't have to move that. Someone else will do it because they're playing it tonight. No, you're with the group, right? You're in the group. The group moves as a group. It didn't say Joe Blow individual. It said the group. So you're all responsible. And that's really hard when we're in the age of, I shouldn't have to do that. Or that's not my responsibility. It's no, you have to grow from that. That's going to make you more aware of the things that are going to be necessary to make it and to deal with the things that are in front of you. The fact of, oh, am I supposed to get my music? Or, oh, I didn't know I had to do that. They're always begging. I call it the begging for mercy. They make the mistake and then beg for mercy. And unfortunately, I've seen that with faculty, not just students. See with faculty,
Right.
but the idea, oh, someone's going to always cover for you, and it's like, no, that's not the real world. That's just not the real world. And people remember, make the contractor, make it easy for them to call you. Make that conductor easy to say, oh yeah, get him, no problem. He'll do it, be perfect. Or better yet, oh, wait a minute, the band director who's looking for that percussion consultant, they want someone who understands the situation they're going into and can adapt in a way that works for them, in a way that works for the student, in a way that works for everybody. You can't have blinders going on and thinking your stuff is the only thing. You've been hired to do this job. You've been hired to do this. Take care of it. Take that
Yeah.
responsibility,
Yeah. And the idea of ensemble is good for anyone
Oh, yeah.
because whether you're playing in an orchestra, there's a certain thing you have to, whether it's your ego and no, I'm really a soloist, I'm going to play out stronger, whatever, talking more about the violin and the string players, but it goes to work in whatever job you have, let alone music, but teamwork, you have to be able to collaborate and work with others. And again, I go back to the ego. You've got to put your ego in a certain place where it doesn't stick out because that's not teamwork. And then other thing you mentioned on problem solving,
Mm.
because as we all know, whether it's on stage, whether it's in your car, whether it's in your family, whatever, there's always things that come up, and you need to be able to figure out how to get it done, whatever the issue is, to get through it. And I think that's a very important thing on becoming a professional is not having to depend on someone else to figure it out, but you being able to offer solutions for what's at hand.
Right. Yeah. I agree with that. The idea, each situation that you're in, whether, in school, if you've been in ensembles, that's one thing. Then outside of school, if you've been in groups, that's another. Then if you're dealing with contractors, that's another. You know, um, it's each one of them should give you, how you say, situational chops, a way to be able to know, okay, these things can happen. I mean, and if these things happen, tire goes flat, car won't start, you get sick, something. They should give you these skills to understand how to adapt. That's one. The other thing is you understand how to be resilient. I mean, we are all never always going to feel perfect. I play gigs sick, but I knew that I wasn't going to spread anything, so I was okay. If that job meant that you need to pay that bill and, you're going to do what you need to do.
Yeah.
And to assume that okay, I can miss the gig. Oh, I'm coughing. I can't make it. Those things don't fly in the real world, you know. I don't know. I mean, I had to go. I'm not one to get sick a lot. I really don't. And so, but I do everything I can not to do that, just like anybody here would. And but when it does happen, it's not often enough where I'm thinking, well, I can't make it. I'm thinking, how can I make it? And I know that we have some students that are not necessarily built that way. Their backgrounds are such that they've been maybe coddled a little bit in regards to certain things, or they've been protected. And then at a certain point in time, when you take the protections off, it's like, oh wow, what do I do? And that's that resilience. That's that idea of taking responsibility. It's it could be challenging, and we end up being the parent. If you're a teacher, you end up being that parent, whether you're teaching them privately or whether you're teaching them in college or whether they're in ABOP. You know, we end up taking some of that role of like, what do I do in this situation? Well, here's what you need to do. What did you see happen because of this? What was the effect of you not being prepared? What was the effect of you not writing down the information? What was the effect of you not following the instructions that were put before you?
Yeah.
You
I
know,
think that's a big thing. When they're in school, it's one thing, but then perhaps later, perhaps, because I don't see them all getting it, is that they will see the consequences. And that's the thing. If you don't show up to class at school, that's one thing. But if you don't show up to a gig, there are consequences and it leads to financial consequences. And I think that starts to turn. Then they start to get it. Oh, you mean
right.
I'm not going to get paid, or I got cut because I came a half hour late to the rehearsal? Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So that's an input to get them to actually change a bit and be more reliable. But, another point I have is that all students are different. We know that. They all learn differently. And some learn by example of watching us, and some don't. Some need to be told, some need it in a book, some need to see it on YouTube to YouTube, So it's a variety. And to me, it doesn't really matter how they get it, as long as they eventually get the idea that
yeah.
you're in control. I'm not in
Mhm.
control of your life. None of your teachers are. We're offering you the information, we're giving you direction based on our experience. It's up to you to do what you do with it. We give you the options and you can go down road A, B, and C, but it's your decision and then you do the consequences. And if the consequences are great, great. If not, well, you need to evaluate. Again, that's that self-assessment and be able to say, okay, this is what happened and this is why this happened. And in the future, I'm learning from my experience. In the future, I will do it perhaps a different way, you know.
Right. Right.
I think it's hard for them to get that concept until they experience it. And then still, for me, some of them don't get it.
Yeah, that's tough. That takes growing up. And that,
Yes,
that's just something you got to face. I have to face no amount of lecturing or threatening. Sometimes I'm like, wow, this is something. But I think
even, sorry, Joseph, but even giving them a lesser grade, some of that, sometimes that doesn't work either.
right, it doesn't because they'll say, well, if I get a C, I must have done okay. So wow.
But I'm sorry, again, I may interrupt again. But like I said, if you cut their pay and it's a
Yeah.
gig, they
Well,
tend to get it a little bit more there. I'm sorry, Joseph, go
oh, for
ahead.
sure. I mean, yeah, I was going to say, money talks, but at the student level, we just do what we can. I think I've been fortunate, like at community college, is that my ensembles and my classes, the age mixture is wide. It's not like I have an incoming class of freshmen. There's maybe, I don't know, 10. They're all 18 years old. So that seems like that's hard. But fortunately, I'll have a range of ages from maybe like late teenage years to adults, retired adults who are there to take a class just for their own improvement. And I think that helps. I don't know specifically because I've never, I didn't really study it, but I just think that watching more mature people approach the work and the preparation, it may not be immediate, the results, but hopefully somewhere down the line, they saw, one of their classmates who were in the 50s, 60s, 70s who are doing the work, who are not as, who are somewhat at a disadvantage because physically some of the percussion stuff is going to be, it's for youth, speed and dexterity, but the determination to try and to try really hard and to prepare comes from the older students, the people who are retired, who say, I'm gonna use the time that I have to try to get this together. It doesn't, I know sometimes that's not necessarily because they'll have struggles too. But as community college, I think I've been fortunate to have that kind of balance between youth and mature experience. And, I think it helps to some degree. When I did my evaluation of myself, I would say, I need to be more patient. That I can't expect that as things change, technology changes, and some of the students, they want things now. They think, or, just in a immediate gratification situation. And there's nothing I can do about that. It just time is what we need to invest time in it and to be patient. But I think maybe if we put the students in situations where we bring in maybe lecturers, colleagues, established, because sometimes students, they don't listen to me, they listen to someone else. You know,
Yes,
We can all
man.
relate to
Yes,
that.
yes, yes.
go figure. But that's just my experience.
Yeah.
No, you're right on, Joseph. When I bring clinicians in, like when I brought Ricky and I brought and I'm sure I'm going to bring some other folks here on the screen in at some point in time, you know, in to have a conversation with students. It's not just because they're great players or they can do a great clinic or they have information to share. It's just the fact that where they are, they should ask about those career things. They should ask about how did you get here? And Ricky knows this. I mean, he was here when I had a senior, a budding senior, he was a great player. He was really good. Um, and he was looking for grad schools. And I said, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this. And I laid it out. I said, you need this and this. And I gave him these are the people you can contact. And I said, I know these people. Yes, I know this person, etc. And in the end, I found out that he didn't follow through with a few things. He did some things. And, when it really came down to it, he needed money. And I was like, well, what are you going to do now that your first choice didn't happen? What are you going to do? I mean, did you give yourself every opportunity? And eventually he did end up at one of the schools where I knew the percussion instructor and that would help him. But it's one of those things where I don't know if he explored every option. And so I don't, again, after being in lessons with the student for, 2 years and them seeing that, look, if you like what I'm doing, I know someone who can take you to the next level, but you have to do just as much and you have to follow me because, I mean, one of the students was going to come to you, Ricky. I said, I know what he's going to do. And he had a chance to see you play and he still didn't do what he was supposed to do. But,
Sorry.
again, the lesson may not be learned in that time frame. And Joseph, that's what you're talking about. That you have an infinite amount of time to be able to get a student to a certain level. Terry, same thing. You have a certain amount of time to get them ready for a solo event. So they have to recall the information that helped them to get there, and then maybe use that to push themselves further. But man, I, these were things. This had nothing to do with music. This had everything to do with them following through, them taking the next level, taking constructive feedback, if you want to say, and say, these are things I think you can do. Now, it's on you. Now, I'll tell you this master student's round, he's in his second year, University of Louisville. And can I tell you whether or not what he's doing? I haven't had that phone call yet, but I'm expecting it.
Yeah.
That's the network. But if those students don't use their network in a constructive way for feedback and honest feedback, all you can do is let them keep microwaving what they think is right. That's a nice way to say it.
Does this all come down to discipline?
Yes.
And then my second part is, if it does, should we not start recruiting for the military earlier? Now, I'm kind of serious. Is military life, as in if you enroll for, let's say, 2, 4 years, whatever, is that not a benefit for a lot of our young people to learn discipline, leadership? I mean, I can go on, teamwork, time management,
Yeah.
problem solving, resilience, the ability to adapt to very difficult life situations. Is something like that very valuable for a lot of our young people?
It could be.
I mean, versus band camp. That's the closest thing we have
Same
to it,
difference.
right? I had to throw that in there.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
Ricky would know about that too, right?
boot band camp.
Band camp, boy. Ooh, that's a
Yeah.
whole nother thing.
But isn't it all about maybe number one or high up on a list, just having the discipline to do what you need to do?
I
Well,
agree. I was going to say I've got some students now, and this was a question a while back. Like I have a list of responsibilities for different areas we have in the building. So each semester, so many people are assigned to a certain area. Since there's more students in areas, like sometimes we double up. But one great thing that happened is that at the beginning of this semester, some of my lead students, these are undergrads, went through and found all the equipment and instruments that belong to band or to the music department, and they got the serial numbers on those things, talked about what repairs need to be done, what need to be replaced, and they prepared that list. And now these same ones that do this, these are the same ones that do like indoor or drum corps, where they've learned these disciplines. That was my whole
Hmm.
point. Where they learn to be responsible. You got to be at a certain place at a certain time. You got to
Right.
travel like 200 miles just to be in the Corps every weekend. I got those kind of people. And so they
Yeah.
learn that kind of discipline. And those are the ones that excel. Like for the
Yep.
semester, I told you I allowed them to pick some of the percussion ensemble pieces. Now they're picking like more of the pieces. And so my one student, he devised a rehearsal plan for the entire semester because everyone can't meet during the percussion ensemble time because they're in vocal class or something. And so they rehearse in these small groups, and then we have these certain points where we all come together and work it out. But a student designed all that, you know. So it
wow.
makes my job easy. This is my fourth year, and I've thought about retirement, but every year having students like this, and I've had some good ones to come in, it make you just want to stay in a little longer because the job becomes easy.
Yeah, that's great because that they're gonna need that skill. I mean, to juggle schedules nowadays is intense, you know, with everything that, students that come to you, they think, oh, whatever I did in high school, I can do everything that. I can do all that. It's like, not really.
Yeah.
You know,
Like Joseph said, they have to mature into that kind of thing. You know, and I tell them this is the last step before you become a professional. You know, do the things you're going to do now when you become a professional. You know, don't let me have to tell you everything. Do some things and let me just compliment you on it, but don't let me have to tell you to do everything. Do the things that you should do.
well, the other thing, Ricky, that goes with that is the students that we run up against now. If you said I did a good job, I said, okay, great, let's move on. For them, it's like, oh well, thank you. They need that little praise to do the things that they feel I should be appreciated for just being here. It's like I don't know, maybe that's a different way of approaching it. It's like everyone
Yeah.
doesn't get an award. If you did your job, that was what you were supposed to do.
That's what I see in society. And I can say in sports, it's obvious. A guy makes a tackle, he gets up and he celebrates. It's like that you're doing your job, man. Just get
Yeah.
back into the huddle.
That drives
But
me
I
crazy.
see that everywhere. Everybody wants this praise for living, which, okay, some people probably deserve that. But for the average person, my goodness, come
Yeah,
I
on.
totally
it gets
agree. That
old.
drives me crazy
And
to see
when,
those celebrated.
again, we are role models, whether we want to be or not. And then young people look at that and they see what happens on TV and football games, basketball, etc. And that's what they do. They emulate that. And to me, it's not quite right. I mean, yeah.
I
Right.
agree. hmm I agree.
Totally agree. Yeah, I mean, everything is not a trophy. Everything's not a certificate.
Well,
It's
don't they give every Little League baseball team a trophy or something? I've heard about that.
well,
There's
see that.
controversy over that. And,
Yeah,
Participation award.
yeah. There we go.
yeah,
There we go.
yeah.
You know,
I don't know about that. Isn't there a way to encourage the young folks without having to give them something? I
you
mean, give
know,
them a hug,
you
give them
know.
a nice talk,
Yeah.
but have to give them a trophy, have to give them a certificate for playing on a team.
I'll tell
Okay,
you
I'm getting
this.
off subject, so
No, not really, not
No,
really. It's like, for example, I know
good
that,
point.
if we're giving out scholarships, and not everyone's going to get something, nor does everyone deserve something. But yet, if we don't recognize somebody or something, they'll feel slighted or something. I'm like, well, what are you talking about?
Mhm.
They didn't get it. This gives them the carrot to want to try to do better. That's what it should be for.
Yeah.
It's not, to me, a failure is just the next step. You're a step away from success. You just didn't make it.
I think it devalues those that really work hard and, do the things that have the discipline.
Mhm.
Whether it's on the football field or wherever, or baseball or little league, whatever. By everybody receiving something, it lessens what the ones that really put in the effort and the time.
Mhm.
Right. But the other side of it is they have to understand a no. What does no mean? At a certain point in time, no doesn't mean you were terrible. No means you have things to work on. It's another step you have to take that wasn't quite, you weren't quite there. I could say, no, you're wrong, you're terrible. I said, no, or I could say, you didn't make it this time. You need to do this. And then you give the constructive criticism, and they have to be able to take it. And that's another little problem.
Yeah, self-assessment.
Self-assess whether they
Being
can
able to
take
accept that.
accept the fact that they didn't make it, and try, instead of saying, oh man, I give up, I'm done, say, here are the things I need to work on. Or look at the rating sheet and see what they said. And they said, oh, well, you had some problems with rhythm, you had some problems with articulation, things that weren't there, or your technique in this area was weak. Well, that should be the blueprint for the next thing,
Yeah,
versus, oh man, I'm done, I'm not trying out no more. It was too much work,
yeah,
blah, blah.
yeah,
No, you just weren't quite ready, and you need to do that.
yeah,
And we have to say that to a student. Sometimes they get it, that ego gets in the way.
yeah. Well, somewhere in there, there's a saying that behind every successful thing you do, there's 20 failures.
Oh, yes.
That happens first, and you can say that about auditions too. Rarely do you win your first audition. It takes many, and rarely do you hit a home run the first time you're at bat.
Yeah.
But like I think Joseph, you said, and maybe Ricky, it's that patience. They don't have it. How do we make them more patient in the things that they need to progress in? How do we give them patience? What else can we do?
That's hard, man.
It's a fast world that's zooming by, and they want everything fast. They don't want to have to sit in a practice room for months to perfect whatever. They want it tomorrow, if not today.
Some of that we don't have any control over it. We just have to admit it, that as much as we want it, like you said, human beings are different. And I know of musicians who started their lessons, their study, like when they were, I don't know, 5, 6, 10, and really serious. And by that, you hear about these stories like they started playing their instrument at age 10, and by 13 they were gigging. Just people are so different. So I think we have to be patient with ourselves to say we just can't get that in everyone. Perhaps we'll be blessed with a student. You say, wow, that person, they're more mature at their age than I was, because I know myself, I'm still learning. And I say, sometimes I think the best thing that happened to me was when I transferred to Cal State Northridge, and from like community college, and I saw performers and students who had been studying since they were like young and could play at a relatively high level. That was a motivation. And I try not to comparison ourselves to one another. That's difficult, especially in the student environment, to compare this student to that, and to maybe say things like, look what X is doing. I don't want to do that. They need to be in a situation where they're witnessing someone doing extraordinary kind of work, or taking all these qualities and they have them together. And hopefully it'll rub off on them. But it takes time. And we have, like I said, we have to be patient and just kind of, love what we do, not blame ourselves, because it is something that takes time to develop, and we have to just hang in there with it. It's a very difficult thing. I guess, there's ways around it. I'm sure, you gentlemen seem to have figured it out, and ways to approach it as as teachers and educators to at least give someone the opportunity at some level to try to figure these things out for themselves, give them some responsibility, and hopefully they accept that and execute, the things that you want. I do think that, again, I tell my, like when students, we were preparing for recitals, and when I do my own preparation, I'd have them keep a log and, of a calendar or whatever, notating what they do and how much time they prepared on it, so they can look and see what their progress is. And, hopefully that at least establishes some kind of discipline in them to remain true to that. And they see blank spaces and they didn't do anything, I tell them, put DNT, did not practice. Be honest.
Yeah.
Be honest, because I can tell.
Yeah.
We all can tell when it's together and when it isn't, and when the effort has been there. So hopefully something like that is an aid toward fostering discipline.
I agree. Well said. I'm a strong proponent of practice logs, and in our modern day, recording themselves and perhaps saving that and look back, like you say, Joe, 6 months back and see your progress.
Right.
That should be a part of the impetus for you to get you going. Wow, this works. I see it's taken 6 months, but it works. So, okay, I just got to do it, I guess, because it didn't work in 3 months, but I see the progress I made in 6 months. I'm in a place where I prefer now. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, I really think, and Joseph, you hit it. It's, besides being the example for them, it's the idea of putting students in situations where they have to do it.
Right.
They don't have a choice. I can just remember back where we have a percussionist here who was a freshman last year, and he didn't get it that he needed to be responsible in the Wind Symphony for organizing the players. There's some non-majors in there, and obviously their goals are different for being in an ensemble than his, but he, as the major, is the person that needs to lead it. And for so long, usually there's some connective tissue where, if you have a freshman in, there's usually maybe a junior that they're paired with, and they would understand and follow and see the things that they're doing. He didn't have that same example. So in essence, he went a whole year of thinking, well, the band director is supposed to do this. And I'm like going, really? And then I would get those comments and say, well, such and such should do this. I said, have you talked to the instructor? Have you talked to the band director? How does he want to do it? Because it's not for me to decide what someone else's ensemble is going to be doing. And finally, after his sophomore year, and he's figured out that, oh, I have to be responsible. And it's like, whoo, that took some work, because for some reason, he thought it was somebody else's responsibility to organize his section. And he wants to be the section leader. So you need to step up. And it's like, he was pulling teeth. It's like, well, how are we going to move this? How am I going to move that? I said, that's not for me to decide. What, I have enough to do. I'm not supposed to be doing that for you. And then other things pop up. How do you do this? How do you do that? It's like, didn't you learn after 1 year that this was? So it was situational for him. I'm glad he's learning it. But again, time is not our friend when we're in a degree program. It's like, you got to get your stuff and get moving and make sure you have things together. And hopefully, Terry, all those students that are doing all state and eventually coming to the collegiate level, they get it. They better take the lessons from you and get organized and be ready to come in, because the demands that we have to get students through is one thing, but for them to have all the skills, not just the playing skills, but these other skills that we're talking about, is critical for them making it in the real world. Because
I think that back to what you said, that failure is one step away from success. And it seems like the lesson to be learned is we have to allow the students, and the students need to experience failure before they get it. They need to experience that not practicing patiently, or those consequences, failure. And they'll be like, oh yeah, I need to practice as my teacher said, and it's going to take 6 months. There's success. Same thing with responsibility. If you're not responsible, there are consequences. That's your failure. You figure it out, you learn responsibility, success. So, I mean, failure is part of what we experience, and we just have to handle it and then move forward from that.
Maybe the concept is, and Ricky, I'll let you jump in, maybe the concept is we have to build in that there's going to be a buffer of a point in time where you allow them to fail.
Right.
You allow them not to step in just before it's crunch time, then you can kind of say, hey, you might want to do this. But
Mm.
let them linger in that la la land a little bit. You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
I was just going to say I agree.
So, with life, there's many things that happen, and with work. So, how do we balance those two? Because things are always going to come up. And I have found that learning how to limit your focus so that you don't have too many things you're trying to focus on really makes life easier. When you have 10 things, or when I have 10 things that are happening in the next month, it's difficult. When I have three or four, it's manageable. And the difference is saying no. I'm asked to do this, asked to do that. I have to really think of myself first and not think of, well, if I tell this person no, they're going to be pissed. And no, I mean, that cannot be my major consideration. My major consideration needs to be what I can do effectively, what I can do in this amount of time that makes me feel good about myself and I get the job done. That doesn't mean doing the 10 things, then that's the way it is. So how do you guys approach this? And again, with your students in mind.
I think for me, I mean, going back to what Joseph said, I think Don as well, is definitely keeping a log and enumerating, listing everything that is on your plate so that you can actually see what you have going on. I think in school, at the collegiate level, you have your lesson materials, you have your ensembles, you have your other classes, all these responsibilities, and to actually see them in order of importance or just what you have to do really helps out. And then you can cross out, things that have been accomplished or aren't as important. But just keeping a journal in general, I think is
Yeah.
very, very
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I'm a super note taker. I mean, I kind of divide things up based upon personal things, school things, and the school things divide up into administrative, faculty, all the various things, and then my own playing things I need to do. I try to hit those things based upon whether they are short-term things that I know or long-term, mid-range things that I know I'll be doing over a period of time, and those long-term goals of spacing those things out. I think we all probably keep lists in our head, but the idea of writing it down makes it real.
Don,
Yes.
sorry, could I stop you for a second? And
Sure.
for some of the younger folks that hopefully are listening, can you explain with a non-musical example what is short term and what is long term for you in setting a goal?
Okay. There's certain things that you need to do to prepare. Maybe it's something that you have to do at the house. And you know that a plumbing issue might be something that is a short term because anything that's water related, Lord have mercy, you got to take care of that. Okay.
Yeah, we
All
all
right.
know that.
Yeah, but if anything that is something that's more long term that you're going to have to buy in order to make sure that your living arrangement is better. Okay, let's say the fridge is going bad, so you know that you're going to have to prepare a little shorter term to get something there. You can see it's starting to go, or if the AC is starting to go. Again, these are things that you would maybe say, okay, I need to start saving now. I know it's on this last leg, so I'm going to have to kind of think, okay, I need this in the short term. The plumbing got to take care of. The AC it may be a longer term goal. A middle goal may be, well, I need time to be able to repair that piece of equipment that I have in the back that is crucial for me to be able to play this piece down the line. Okay, so thinking about what steps you need to do and can you do each step in some sort of sequential manner that's going to get them all accomplished, maybe not all at the same time, but definitely you're working at it, and be satisfied with the progress you're making towards it, knowing that this is an endpoint for this one, here's an endpoint for the next one.
And
And
I would interject there to use the P word, prioritize. That's what you're
yeah,
talking about.
oh yeah,
Being able to, number one, identify your tasks, whether it's like we say, short term, coming up soon, or long term, and being able to put them in a priority of what needs attention. That's so important in life, but
yes.
especially if you're in school and you've got recital, you've got ensemble things, you have auditions, you've got to prioritize. So keep going, Don.
Yeah. And so the big thing is when you prioritize, then it's like now you have to be honest with yourself. As you're going through this process, you have to put yourself in that line and saying, as these short, midterm, and long-term goals are occurring, are there things that could interrupt that? And obviously they can. They can occur at any time. Maybe the car goes down. Ooh, that could be a big one. You know, that could really influence how the other things work, or how you say how the funds are going to be
Right. There you
to
go.
get those done. And so the things that kick in the reality are the things that should make you start to prioritize the events and things that you need in your life. I mean, it's all connected, because we know that in order to be able to do these things, I think, and the idea of writing it down is one thing, but the other thing is, once you've gone through it once, you have the experience now of understanding what your tendencies are, as an individual. Are your tendencies to gravitate towards the things that take the long-term goal? Or I'm just going to try to get all the short-term things done. And then when I get that done, then I'll start the next one. But sometimes that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so hopefully they will discover a few more things about how they work and how they pursue goals, how they go about getting things done. I mean, I have to inchworm my way towards certain things, because sometimes the information that I need to do it is not readily available, or I have to create it in order to make it happen. Whereas some people will have it in front of them and they don't necessarily know what to do with the information. So they're trying to figure out, oh, how do I fix that? How do I do that? And they have to do a little bit more research. It's really interesting, long time ago, we didn't have YouTube. So there's certain things you couldn't figure out how to fix. Shoot, you go on YouTube and almost fix just about anything. But there still is another degree of research you have to do before you start dealing with electricity and plumbing and all that stuff. You got to have some understanding and say, wait, maybe that's not for me to do. Maybe I need to get someone else to help me, or I need to seek some more advice. Again, understanding what your limitations are and what your tendencies are things I think that help us try to, get that balance of prioritizing things.
Yeah. Then there's the other P word. I'll have to throw this up. It's procrastination.
Oh, dangerous.
So it's great if you make your priorities, your lists, and and they're all color coded and all that. But getting started, Ricky, how do you get that procrastination thing out of the room? Because your list will just get longer and longer.
Yeah. I've definitely seen that happen with my list. Even though I make a list every day, I try to get it all done. Sometimes I
Yeah.
don't, and things are super important. I should get done. So I found out the best thing to do is, as soon as I think about it or write it down, it's best to do it then as opposed to wait.
Yeah.
And you hope that students would do the same thing if they can just really get those things done when they have to, as opposed to waiting till the last minute. Chances are you don't have enough time, you can't get it done. So that's a tough one, even for me.
Yeah, waiting and it's the last minute, you usually lack the quality because you don't have enough time.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, you could say it with playing, with practicing. Okay, I'm going to wait till the week before I start working on this piece I'm doing on my recital. Oh boy, disaster. You know,
Yeah, it'll come together. It has to.
there's learning by experience. You fail on stage, because you didn't start 2 months, 3 months ahead of time. So, Terry, you don't look like a procrastinator, right?
I try not to. I used to tell my students, the only limit to what you can do is your willingness to do it.
Yeah.
So if you're not willing to do something, then it's not going to get done. And so I tell some students now, I'm like, any amount of effort is better than no effort at all. They say, I don't have time to practice. I can't, when you procrastinate, you just don't do anything, right? So if you
Yeah.
just do a little bit, that's better than nothing.
Yes.
Still
Yes.
progress. Can't
Yeah.
practice 30 minutes, 5 minutes is better than saying, well, I can't do anything at all, I'm going to do zero.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, Terry, because when a student says, I don't have time to practice, then I break down and say, okay, what are you doing during the week? All right. Then we look at the schedule and we pop down a schedule. Okay, schedule says you have this, this, and this, because I've already figured out their schedule based upon what I pulled up in the computer and the system that has it. All right, boom. Okay, what are you doing that day? Oh, well, that's chill time. What's chill time? I don't know nothing about that. What's that? Okay, no, that's not chill time. That's your practice time. Does that happen 5 days a week? Okay, that's 15, 20 minutes. I want you doing this, 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 this. And so
Yeah.
you end up being their scheduler for a little bit until they start to understand that, oh, consistent practice is better than trying to do this massive chunk of stuff that
Right.
doesn't. And the
Right.
same goes for anything else if they were doing an assignment in another class. You can't read a 500-page book in 2 days thinking that you're going to absorb that information. Heck no. So you got to figure out how you're
Yes.
going to break that down.
Yeah.
That's the skill that is still lacking. The idea of being able to look at something and break it down. We would
Yes.
hope from a music standpoint, after being in a theory class, they would understand about how music is put together, form and analysis, things like that. You would think from oral skills, they would understand how to apply that information to the things that they're doing in their own music. You would think by observing their parts, how their parts fit into an ensemble situation, they would understand where their importance is at and understand that, okay, if I have my stuff together, then I know what to listen for. It's set up for them to succeed, but they have to want to buy into the system of incremental successes, incremental
Progress.
progress
Yeah.
versus immediate microwave. I got it.
Right. Right.
And it's not
Right.
going to happen.
I would guess that a lot of students probably go to the gym or, are fitness savvy, right? And so, I mean, I use that analogy as well. You can't say, I want to bulk up and put on 100 pounds of muscle overnight. It takes time. It takes a process of, getting your protein, your diet, going to the gym, having a set schedule, being consistent. Or if you want to lose weight, you can't just decide to lose 50 pounds overnight. You have to change your diet. You have to count your calories. So all of this is not just in music, it applies to real life as well. And so
Right.
I think if there are gym goers out there that are listening or people who are fitness savvy, this is the same thing. It's all about being patient and like you said, Don, breaking things down, understanding the process of everything that you do
Yeah.
and how it carries out in the long run.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say almost the same thing. I was just going to use our garages as an example. A garage, when you have a house, is typically where you put stuff to store, and over time, you can have a lot of stuff in your garage, right?
Mhm.
And to decide, okay, I'm going to clean my garage out, that's a big task. So it's like practicing. If you do a little every week, it won't be as bad. It won't be as intimidating. And the hardest thing usually is getting started, just the first time.
Yeah.
Once you get it going, oh, this isn't so bad. I give away this stuff, keep this, whatever. You do that once a week or whatever your schedule is. You get the task done. So the same thing we can say for music, the same thing we say for life. Anything that looks really intimidating, number one, I'd say it's probably not that bad. It's your preconceived ideas that are giving you that fear of attacking it. And then once you deal with it in small little chunks, whatever the issue is, it'll be a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, again, if I've had a freshman and I'm going to teach them a piece, we may talk about, okay, all right, maybe you can play through it at half speed. That's great. Now, are you missing anything? Do we need to chunk through certain things so that you can make sure these things are together before you go further? The idea is slow practice is good practice. Well, the idea also is consistent practice is good practice. And the next thing is some practice is better than no practice, right? But the idea of scheduling things and putting every piece or every task that you have on a schedule of what to do and how much to do. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I can get, I've had the luxury of having a third grader or a fourth grader, be able to play something like, Pinecone Forest after 4 months. Yeah, that's pretty intense.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how did that happen? Well, it's because the student didn't have all those distractions.
Hmm.
Whereas someone who's older now has those distractions. They concerned about what they wear. They concerned about what they drive, and they concerned about what they look like in public versus what they are actually producing and how they're able to function. So the outside world says, I want it now. But their reality is they need to spend that nice chunk of time working on themselves. And in essence, it will help them be more strategic, more prioritizing in terms of what they do. And they'll see that once they get things, they will always start to happen if they follow their process. But getting them through to understand that the process has to be followed before you actually see the end result is the challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that work-life balance. I just tell the student it's called work for a reason. Once they learn, musicians are in a great spot because we're doing something that's very few people get an opportunity to do, or to work on a craft like ours, and if you become successful and as a professional, it's really, really a privilege. But I tell them, I says, some people don't have that privilege. I mean, their work is like 10 hours a day. Not to disparage any work, but it's maybe not creative. It's maybe
Right.
repetitive. It doesn't engage them intellectually. And that, I tell my students, you have all this going for you. You're in something where you get to be in music, be involved in like science and physics just by what you do, works of art and creation and design. So I said, you really are in a good spot, but they call it work for a reason. Everybody on this planet is going to be earning their keep, hopefully. And my balance is the work's going to come first because it kind of has to, just to be successful living on planet Earth. Your work just has to come first, and that, and then after a while, it's like, well, it's a pleasure to do it. But that's what I tell them. I try to impart that upon to them, and hopefully it gets through. You're not going to get around it. You're going to be doing something. The majority of us will do something to earn a living. But even if you don't do it in music, it's still a pleasure to be involved with the creative process and these brilliant people that we study and listen to and their works and scores. And, how hard it was what they did and how we can enjoy perhaps being a part of it. So I try to talk to, I think it's, it's a philosophical thing sometimes, that it's just hard to impart, but you're going to be doing something.
You know what, Joseph, what you're saying is great. It actually sounds like they need to humble themselves to the process of doing this. And oftentimes when we encounter students today, they think that they're owed this versus they should be working towards something. And for me, I'm looking for that person who's humble to what needs to happen and not just always wanting to take and understanding that there's a process. Maybe they don't have those skills to humble them. They think that they should know everything right away, and they don't. They just need to think about, okay, go through the process. I'm here in school or for a reason. It's not because I know everything right now, it's because I'm learning. So the idea of humbling themselves to the process of developing their skills versus saying, I already know it and this is who I am. I'm already arrived. They haven't. I haven't arrived. If I'm still working on it, there's no way in the world you're there yet. They always talk about paying your dues. It's like, this is not paying your dues. This is basically saying, hey, back up. You understand that you have much to learn. You need to keep an open mind. You need to be humble to the process of developing the skills you need, because I know I've already been there. We're trying to help them avoid the potholes. I'm not saying that they're not going to have some humps they have to go home, but at least they shouldn't have to go down the pothole, to do anything. We use a bunch of analogies to try to make students understand that you're not all that in a bag of fries yet. Come on now. You still have things to learn. And I take advice from all of you. I'm loving this because each time I keep thinking, oh man, I could use that. Oh, that's another thing to push a student over the rim to the next step, or faculty member, or a staff member, or someone who thinks that, oh, just because I got tenure, I don't have to do this. It's like, how'd you get here? Because you had to do it. Guess what? Didn't stop. Nothing changed. It's just maybe you just got a little full of yourself. And okay, bring it back down. So again, that's an understanding. And I know we have to deal with our ABOPers who are really been given lots of things, and Raynor and all the various donors that have helped. You've been given something, but again, you have to want to go that next step and say, okay, yeah, you're not arrived yet. Yes, you're working on it, but be humble to the process. That was a lot.
Good.
Well, there is a lot. There is a lot for them to consider. There's a lot going on. There's a lot we discuss. There's many things involved in becoming a professional. And we all realize that it's tough. There are really tough times. And this will be perhaps the last point I'd like for us to just go over is, the stress alerts us to our mental health. So, how do we deal with that? How do we cope with that? Because, if your head's not there, your body's not going to be there. So, that's a very important thing, too. Learning that you have certain limits, learning what it is, and listening to yourself, listening to your body, listening to your mind. All that plays an important part. And if you don't have that together, also, again, it's going to affect your well-being and you and you're interacting in the professional world. So, what would you guys say to younger people about their mental health? Is it important?
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Is it okay to seek help?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, when we talk about mental health, we talk about what things are triggers for you. And so I'm no specialist in this area by no means, but you have to recognize that it's okay to seek out help. I think that's one of the things often is challenging. It's like, when you're young, you're invincible. You don't think that you have anything wrong. You think you can do everything. But there are lines that you have to understand that your body talks, your mind talks to you, and it says this is a limit. Okay, when that happens, you have to know, I say, to thyself be true, and know that, all right, I can't really handle all this, so let me seek out some advice. Every university has counseling areas and things like that. At the high school level, it might be a little different, but I'm assuming that there's avenues. Oftentimes, to a certain degree, if students taking private lessons with you and you're in a one-on-one, they're going to trust you more than may trust somebody else. And so we just have to be resourceful. And when we see those tendencies, maybe point them in a direction there. That could be a conversation with a parent. It could be pointing them to the resources that exist at a university, pointing resources that may be in their environment that they may be able to take part in or be able to take advantage of. Again, mental toughness, it's not necessarily mental toughness, it's mental awareness. Know your tendencies. And we hope that over a period of time, based upon the situations and they will understand how they deal with adversity, how they deal with situations that are not necessarily positive, how they interact with another student, what things upset them, what things make them happy, what things can they deal with, can they compartmentalize certain things and say, that was this situation, I need to deal with this. It gets back to Joseph saying situations. They have to know the situations that they need to be in, and so know the situations that they need to avoid or improve how they flow for them. Everyone in percussion ensemble, they don't all like each other, you know. So and it's just like any ensemble, orchestral ensembles, you don't always like everybody, but you have to learn how to deal with it. You can't let that upset you. You have to understand where your place is in that. And those are mental challenges sometimes. If everyone played great, I don't still think you have a great ensemble because they still have to figure out how to play together. And those challenges, head games people play, so those are things we have to work on.
If I could add to that, I mean, it's great, great, great stuff. But I think we should also recognize that there's a stigma for asking for help. I mean, because I'm sure I'm not alone having experienced mental issues when I was in college. I was young and a lot of stuff was going on. I couldn't handle the stress. But I've learned that asking for help is a very courageous thing. That it takes a lot of courage to ask for help. It's very easy to not ask for help and just to, just be alone and isolate yourself. But it takes a lot of courage. And so I highly recommend that any student that's experienced any kind of mental issues or stress or whatever, ask for help. It's not a sign of weakness. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's you're taking care of yourself. You're watching out for yourself. You're helping yourself get through life. And that's important. You need to do that. We all need to do that.
Agreed.
Well said.
Mhm.
Well, gentlemen, I think we've hit upon many important points and many helpful ideas through our experiences in our own lives and through teaching. We have a unique perspective in that way. And it's not just about music, it's about how you handle your life, and they coincide. So I thank you guys so much for this time. It's so appreciated. And let's continue the discussion because life continues. There are more challenges ahead, right?
Oh, we have some real challenges.
So, again, Joseph, Ricky, Terry, and Don, thank you so much for joining me on this ABOP podcast. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us, Raynor.
My pleasure.
That concludes this episode, Strategies for Personal and Professional Development. Thank you to our guests and ABOP advisors, Ricky Burkhead, Joseph Mitchell, and Don Parker. And thank you to ABOP advisor and mentor, Terry McKinney. I hope you enjoyed our discussion. A special thank you to our supporters and sponsors of ABOP's mentorship program. Our corporate sponsors include Black Swamp Percussion, Cooperman, Freer Percussion, Innovative Percussion, InSound Mallets, Majestic Percussion, Marimba One, Malatech, Remo, Sabian, Vic Firth, and Zildjian. ABOP is a nonprofit. Your donations are tax deductible. Check out our website, www.abop.us, for information on how you can contribute. Please follow our podcast and spread the word about ABOP. We greatly appreciate your support. We are the Alliance of Black Orchestral Percussionists, ABOP. Thank you for listening.